This lesson is solving proportions with maps. And as you can see from this very detailed and accurate map of the United States, we can actually calculate with maps distances. Now, obviously, we can't roll out the entire United States and measure it just right here in this room or in the classroom that you're sitting, but with a map and with proportions, we'll actually be able to figure out how far across the United States span is. How many miles is that? Well, in every single map that you see, there's going to be a legend. And it will say something along the lines of this distance, and it's usually probably about 1 inch, is 200 miles. Right? So what you do is you just take your ruler and you'd measure from here all the way over to here, and you'd get a pretty good idea of how wide, how many miles across the United States is. So if we take a look at this and we say, okay, so about 1 inch is about 200 miles on this map right here. Say, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Now for 1 inch, I am using this part of my finger, which is not the most accurate measurement in the world, but if you had a ruler and a map in front of you, you could get down to some very detailed measurements. And I said this was about 14 inches. So all the way from here to here was approximately 14 inches. So, how many miles is that? Okay, well, let's think about what we don't know. We don't know how many miles it is. So I'm going to erase part of this over here so we can have some space. Okay, so we know that 14 inches is the equivalent of, I don't know, X miles. We put a variable for things we don't know. But we do know that 1 inch is 200 miles, because that was given to us in the legend. Now, when you are using proportions to help you solve problems, the key is to be consistent. Consistency is absolutely important to getting these problems correct. So for example, if I have inches on the numerator, what should I have on the numerator of this other ratio? Well, if we're being consistent, we should have inches. 1 inch equals, 200 miles. Okay. So we've got inches is to inches, miles is to miles. We were consistent, and now we can solve for the unknown variable. In this case, X miles. How far across is the United States? Well, to solve for a proportion, we cross multiply. $200 times 14. Well, let's do this in our heads. I know it seems like a big number, but we can do this. 2 times 14 is 28. And how many zeros were there? 2 zeros. So it's 28 with 2 zeros equals 1 inch times X miles. Well, that's just 1X. So X in this case equals 2,800 miles. So this is actually a true statement. The furthest west to the furthest east point in the United States is approximately 2,800 miles. And we were able to solve this by using a proportion. Now the key here is to be consistent. If you have inches on top, you should have inches on top on the numerator. If you have miles on the denominator, you should have miles on the denominator. Let's look at a different problem. Okay. Let's say the distance from Austin, Texas to Dallas, Texas is 5 centimeters on a map. Okay, so we're looking like at a map of Texas, for example. If 1 centimeter is 40 miles, how far apart are the cities in miles? Well, we have to be consistent with our proportion. So 5 centimeters is the equivalent of the distance, and we don't know how many miles it is, over X miles equals, and we know 1 centimeter is 40 miles. Remember, we have to be consistent, so we put the centimeters on the numerator. The centimeters will have to be on the numerator over here. Okay, now all we need to do is cross multiply. 5 times 40 is 200, and x times 1 is just 1x, or x. So the distance between Dallas, Texas and Austin, Texas is 200 miles. To summarize, you can solve problems using proportions with maps. Just ensure that you're consistent. Make sure your units are the same on the numerators and denominators, then cross multiply, and you'll find your answer. Have a great day.